Virginia White sees her former roommate of the boarding school Betty Turner in the swimming pool of a hotel in Lisbon and introduces Betty to her friend Roger Whelan. He invites Betty to travel with them to a small town during the weekend. Betty comes alone to meet Virginia and Roger in the train station, and when Virginia sees that Betty and Roger are together, she becomes upset. Virginia sees a village and decides to jump off the train. She walks to the place and discovers that it is an abandoned ruin of a medieval village. Virginia decides to camp in the spot, and during the night she is hunted down by undead that have risen from their tombs riding horses. On the next morning, Roger and Betty decide to seek out Virginia in Bazzano and the borrow horses in the hotel, their lodge, and ride to the village. They meet the police inspector Marcos and Oliveira that tell Roger and Betty that Virginia was murdered. They decide to investigate the death of their friend and they visit Professor Kendall in the National Ministry of Education that tells the story of the evil Templar Knight. They visit the scum Pedro Canal that together with his girlfriend travel with Roger and Betty to Bazzano to spend the night in the ancient village. La Noche del Ciego, also known as the Tomb of the Blinded, is an overrated and lame Spanish-Portuguese production. The story and the screenplay are ridiculous and with many flaws, awful character development and terrible acting. Virginia, for example, preferred to jump off the train in the morning in the middle of nowhere to get rid of Betty, who was invited by her in the hotel to join Roger and her, instead of spending the weekend in a hotel. Then she decided to camp in a lonely, creepy place, and as soon as she arrived in the ruin, it is almost night. Why Roger and Betty decide to spend the night in a place where their friend was murdered? Why did they invite Pedro to come with them? The conclusion, with the operator stopping the train are unable to bring Betty quickly to the locomotive, is dreadful. The Tomb of the Blinded is not strictly a zombie movie, but involves the resurrected dead. While not as explicit as Romero or Fulci, it should appeal to fans of the living dead genre. The movie is strong on atmosphere and style, similar in some ways to John Rollin but without the love or pretension. The Blinded themselves are one of the creepiest and most effective concepts in any horror movie. Slow moving, relentless and deadly, with a penchant for flesh eating. The scenes where the dead ride horses to hunt their prey are classic horror. Only small criticism of this movie is that there were so few scenes of them. Modern horror fans who require wall-to-wall effects and a killing every 15 minutes will probably find this slow going, but true buff will be mesmerized. This film has it all. Pervy Templar Knight killed for dodgy act, written as the Blinded, who unsurprisingly hunt by sound. The best thing is that they can hear the victim heart beating, so there is no escape. I'm not sure whether the blinded are really zombies or vampire, as they tend to suck their victim rather than eat them. But the victim come back to life to continue the good work. The blinded have horses and sword, so they are very hard to escape from. However, how they have the strength to ride or hold a sword with their withered, spindly arm is amazing. The film, as well as having some quite nice creepy scene, has the obligatory 70s lesbian sequence which fit perfectly with the rest of the action. Suppose a filmmaker can only do his best to please all of his viewers. The blinded are nicely made up. There is some go. One of the characters, Pedro, has the sweetest armpit in film history and makes the mistake of taking on a whole army of the blinded with a small knife. The end sequence is really good, as the zombie vampire knight take on a train full of passengers and literally suck the life out of them. First and enjoyable original of the Templar Dead series, in which the medieval zombies awake to commit ritual sacrifices. The blinded Templar returned again from 13th century with this creepy story. Blinded tetralogy is among the best and most prestigious Spanish horror picture of its time. These films are surprisingly well realized and eerie, displaying an original premise. Some zombie-like are blinded by crows as they made human sacrifices and were executed. But then the clergyman returned eventually to the life. The best feature of the film is its title menace, The Blinded. The group of renegade knights were condemned for their black magic rituals, mummified zombies from medieval times which rise from the grave to drink the blood of their victim. Executed for their unholy deed, the Templar bodies were left out for the crows to pick out their eyes. Now in modern day Portugal, a group of people stumble on the Templar in abandoned monastery, reviving their rotting corpses to terrorize the land. The film starts when a trio traveling by train, then Virginia flees and refuges at an old castle. There the priest warrior wake up from the tomb and begin their criminal rampage. Ancient zombies return of grave, causing wreak havoc on the place, horrifying and torturing the rural population. They make a brutal massacre and the protagonists are surrounded in a fortress. Meanwhile, the starring attempt to save the damsel in disgrace and a police inspector is investigating the weird deeds. It is definitely a very entertaining horror flick and eerie as hell, and based on Gustavo Adolfo Becker writing as Mount of Enemas and Miserere. In Tomb of Blinded, we find the famous blinded zombies which rise from the tomb 500 years after to wreak havoc upon some beautiful Eurobabes. The zombie-like pack of ancient warrior priests awake and rising from the grave to kill and torture the unfortunate victim. They were condemned and eternally damned by cult practicing human sacrifices and blinded by crows and attack on his victims, sucking them in hyena style. They encounter their victim by means of scream and sound. This is a cheap Spanish production with lackluster and low budget. Special effects are ridiculous and embarrassing, absurd and frankly lousy but functional, showing lots of blood and gore. This atmospheric horror movie contains scary scene when appear the living dead Templar. It is the first and successful and immensely popular Tomb of Blind Dead series, which to be continued by mediocre attempt to catch up following exhausted medieval warriors saga as a trilogy as Return of Evil Dead, Sheep of Zombies or Blinded 2 and Blinded 3 or The Night of the Seagulls. Colorful cinematography and very well remastered by Pablo Ripoll. This lake budget film is regularly directed by Amando de Ossorio but is amusing and entertaining.